Welcome to the PokerRoad Radio Show, hosted by Gavin Smith, Joe Seabach, and Bart Hansen. The PokerRoad Radio Show is the only poker radio show that Lindsay Lohan was allowed to listen to in rehab.
And we are here on day 2, and that's day 4 of the tournament, day 2. Or actually, would that be day 2 after 1A, 1B, and 1C. There we go, from the North American Poker Championship at the Fallsview Casino and Resort from Niagara Falls, Ontario. I am here with Gavin Smith and Haralbus Vulgaris, sitting in for Joey Seabach. How you doing? Bob, you got knocked out in day 1, right?
Very early.
Did you, so you didn't get any type of start in this tournament?
They gave me 20,000 chips to start. That's about it.
Was it any type of notable story, a bad beat or something?
It's just one of those tournaments where I think you play and you don't really ever feel like you're a part of it.
Yeah.
And no real bad beats, just never really had much focus, never really had much of an opportunity to pick up any chip. I had lots of hands, I just never really won a hand. I never really felt like I had a chance. So.
Yeah. And Gavin, of course, unfortunately for you, you got knocked out early on here in day 2. I thought you were going to get knocked out in day 1, but you had a nice little comeback. Dropped some chips at the end of your day 1 and then was out in hand 2 today?
Second hand of the day, yeah. I got outplayed by Ted Lawson.
Did he make a straight?
Ted Lawson, it was funny because Ted Lawson, for the very first hand of the day, he opens it for 1,500, right? And folds around to the big blind, who was Marcello De La Grosso, and he calls him. And then the flop comes down king high, goes check, bet, fold, and Ted shows the whole table as queens, right? Because that's a brilliant thing to do. So the very next hand now, he's just made it 1,500 with 2 queens. The very next hand now he opens for 1,700. What are the blinds? The blinds were 3 and 600. So he opens for 1,700, and right away I'm like, okay, there's no way Ted has, a huge hand here, because
of what you just saw.
I've just played a bunch with Ted, and sort of, if he had another big hand, he would have probably opened it for 15 again.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like his most likely hand is like a marginal ace. He's not going to come in with complete garbage, but he's probably got like a marginal ace or maybe a small pair. But anyways, it folds around to me, and as it's folding, I'm like, I got a big advantage in this hand, Ted, because I know what you have. And he's like, oh, there's no way you know what I have. There's no way you can know what I have here. And so then it gets to me, and I look down, and I see ace king, and I'm pretty sure I think he's got a bad ace, and I'm like, okay, I'm all in. But as I'm saying I'm all in, I only get to the point where I'm all before he says, I call.
Insta-call.
Right? It was quicker than an insta-call. And it was weird because normally when you get the insta-call like that, it's like, oh, God, I made a mistake here. I've just walked into king's races, But I never got that empty feeling. And then he turned his hand up, and I saw why I didn't get the empty feeling. He had ace-queen, and I had ace-king, and then the flop came with the queen, and the turn came with the queen, and I was out. So Ted wisely used my chips and was able to hang on for another 45 to 50 minutes.
Now, Ted Lawson's one of those guys that seems to be not, and correct me if I'm wrong, not that well respected amongst some of the other players on the tour. Now, we did see that thing where he thought he had a straight on an Omaha broadcast from one of the World Series.
Well, no, I just think he's a really, really, really bad player.
Well, there you go.
As far as respect goes, he might be a nice guy. He's probably a nice guy. He's probably a decent.
He definitely is a nice guy.
He's probably a decent businessman. He could be a good father, whatever. I don't necessarily have no respect for him. I just have no respect for his poker game.
And have you had experience with him?
Yeah, I've played with him quite a bit. I used to play a lot of cash games with him. He used to play the 10-20 no limit, which was maybe 3 years ago, the bigger cash game that they'd have at the Bellagio. They wouldn't really, maybe we'd play 25-50, but that was about as big as it got about 3 or 4 years ago. I used to play with him. He was pretty bad.
Pretty good for the game?
He was great for the game. He'd have a lot of fun. He never really took his beats. He just would constantly be reloading and replaying, and he had fun at the table. I don't think he really ever at that time said that he took poker very seriously. I think it was just more of a hobby for him, and maybe it still is. I don't know.
Some people believe in the thing that certain guys just run lucky. They're just over the long term. I find that hard to believe. All the cards are going to break even, right?
No, not. Well, how long? Over the long term, yes, all the cards will break even. The question is how long the long term is, and I don't think long term is necessarily a lifetime.
No.
I truly believe that somebody can run luckier than somebody else for an entire lifetime.
Really?
Yeah, long term is a long time.
Like a short-term variance of a lifetime?
It's pretty hard to disagree with long term is a long. It's hard to disagree with that statement.
I think it is. I'm not saying. I'm thinking I don't think the cards have to break even over a lifetime.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't even know what that means, the cards breaking even.
Well, I mean, I guess it means, when you're 75% favorite in that spot, you're going to win 75% of the time.
I agree with Gavin. I don't think a lifetime is a long enough time to determine if someone has gotten to the long term. It's just you're playing what, especially if you only play the $10,000 buy-in events, there's 20 or 30 of those a year maximum if you really do a good job of playing every one of them. And then you're only going to play for 20 years. That's nothing. I mean, you compare that to the online kids.
Right, exactly.
It's just not a very big, significant sample.
Well, I mean, with you guys play in all most of the $10,000 events. So, a handful. I mean, I've only played in a couple. And it's like a situation where, say, if a guy satellites in or, he plays in one or two, you might be in a spot where you're an 80% favorite here. And, you lose and you're like, well, long term, I had the value, but you're only going to be in that spot, maybe a handful of times in your life, right?
Right. So that's why you agree with what we're saying.
Maybe you turned me around. I don't know. I'm on both sides of it, but I definitely do see what you're saying.
Right.
I want to do some cross promotion because you are doing Big Poker Sundays with Scott Huff. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're going to be trying to do with that show on every Sunday, right?
Yes, every Sunday at 7 o'clock Pacific, we are going to continue doing the show.
What if you're not in LA?
Then I do it on the phone, I think, or we get a guest house. I'm going to try not to do as many shows on the phone as possible. I don't think the chemistry is there when you've got someone on the phone and the other guy's in the studio. So when I'm not in LA, we're going to kind of play it by ear and see what happens. But we just try to have fun with the show. We try to take a lighter look at poker. We don't really talk much strategy, which is a good thing because neither one of us are real strategy experts. And we just try to talk about the things that are going on in the poker world at that time and just have fun with it.
Now, 2 weeks ago or last week on your most recent show, you had Nat Aram on. He called in.
Who?
He was the
the guy who
he was the guy on 2+2.
Yeah, he broke the absolute poker case wide open.
Yeah.
What was the guy's name again, though?
Nat Aram.
Nat Aram. Okay.
Yeah. What were your impressions of him and what he had to say? We talked a little bit about before the show. He was going to go down to Costa Rica. Absolute Poker invited him, and they were going to pay him to go down and I guess observe the audit process or, go down and ask some questions. Now he took a step back and he said, well, I'm still going to go down, but I'm not going to accept money for them so people won't question my intentions.
I think these guys are all taking this too seriously. I mean, not the issue of the cheating, but just like the online guys doing the detective work. I mean, he's got to worry about his integrity. How can you go audit a company that only keeps a copy of their hand histories for a couple of months? I don't know if you heard about this, but someone requested a hand history that was 5 or 6 months old, and they said, we don't have it. We just don't have the hand histories for that old, so I don't know what they're going to audit.
Why would they get rid of hand histories?
Because Gavin, it's almost the guy said it's almost 30 gigs to keep a month's worth of data. 30 gigs.
What?
It's a joke.
Can't you get 30 gigs on an iPod?
Yeah, you get 60 gigs on an iPod. Bart's probably got more porn on this computer
than Absolute has hand histories.
Well, the question that people wanted to know about those hand histories was, I guess there was a questionable session that Mark Safe played in the beginning of 06 in a limit session, and he was talking to some guys on the rail, and the guy that was beating him, and he said, oh, wait 1 second, I'll be back. Punk came back and supposedly just went on a tear, and the guy that was his opponent said that, there were situations where, it was capped with 8 bets before the flop, and then he'd flop a full house, and the guy would just fold. Mark Safe would just fold, and there's been some criticism of that, and they want to grab the hand histories, but I guess...
Well, they should have watched Mark Safe play for the last 10 years, and then they'd understand it. I don't think that Mark Safe's integrity would be questioned in getting
not
into
not from that example.
And
no.
I mean,
to say that someone played really, really erratic,
and he's the biggest maniac limit player in the planet. So I mean,
he doesn't have a very level temperament when he's playing poker. That's for sure.
Now I asked Barry about this too. He put out a video statement yesterday. What do you think? If you were in his spot, if you were a spokesperson for a site like this, what would how do you think he's handled it? What do you think your take would have been on?
I think it's tough to put yourself in someone else's shoes. I don't know what Mark's financial situation is with Absolute Poker. I don't know if he has an ownership interest or if he's just a spokesperson, if he needs the money. Personally, if it was me, I would not want to have anything to do with the company after this. But that's just me. I might be in a different situation. Mark might have more intimate knowledge as to the goings-on of the situation. I just think that it casts him in a pejorative light to be associated with this company. And if I were him, I'd do everything I could to...
I don't even know what the hell that means, by the way. What is a pejorative light?
It's a bad light. It's dark. It's bad.
So why did you have to have the big word in there?
Well, I don't know. I think we were talking about Mark Safe and seeing as how he uses a lot of big words. But I guess I was wrong. I shouldn't have done it. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Well, we're on to dinner break here after the end of the second day, and Adam Levy has the chip lead with 201,000. Jonathan Little with 189, and
What happened to Bobby?
Bobby Belande
Jean
with
Robert.
183,000. He lost a big pot when he had two pair against Greenstein's set of eights, and that upped Barry up to 134,000. Who do you like here? I mean, have you noticed anything that might?
Would you like to know who I like?
Yeah,
'Cause
who do you like?
Pull out the list.
I happen
Pull out
I
the
happen to be in a draft. And as a matter of fact, in my third pick, I took Adam Levy, who's now the chip leader. My first pick that I took was Nick Schulman. I
Got a good list here.
I took Peter Nordberg Feldman on my team. I've got Bill Edler, and I've got Roy Winston. Nobody took Barry Greenstein in our pool. In
How come
15
no
players
one has-
drafted, nobody took Barry
How
Greenstein.
come no one has Alan Cunningham? Oh, they do.
They did. Melissa.
Oh, okay, first pick, Alan Cunningham.
He was taken first overall.
Now, Bobby Belande, he's been the chip leader for a while in this tournament. A lot of people know him from his antics at the table. He was featured on WPT Bad Boys. What's the deal with this guy? This guy can play as well?
This guy can play, but he just can't play for the whole tournament. When Bobby plays well, he actually has a little bit of talent, and he can actually play. But his problem is he plays well about 10% of the time.
I think Jean Robert has a great table image, and I think that his table talk, is very, very good in the beginning parts of a tournament when he's playing a lot of people who don't really know what he's about or have any idea what he's doing. And I think when he gets to start playing with better players, those types of things don't really work anymore. And I think that's why you see Jean Robert like once every 2 years will actually pick up a lot of chips in a tournament. Like and then it won't ever happen again because it's just kind of the way he goes.
This is the second one in recent memory though that he's had a lot of chips. But he blew the bunch of chips than the other one.
Right.
I mean,
that was the second one
Right.
in like probably the last 4. I mean,
Yeah.
had you ever seen his name before then?
It's not-
he
no,
puts on like the kind of cocky, funny front, which is what, an act, or he really believes the stuff that he says?
I think it's a little bit of an act and a little bit of who he is. The first time I ever met or saw Jean Robert, I hated him. I was like, this guy's a moron. I didn't like him at all. But then after I got to know him, I was like, how can you not like him? He's just a genuine guy.
Well, he was going to put out a book, I think, about how to live as a millionaire,
Yeah.
but when broke or something like
being
that.
broke and living like a millionaire.
I mean, because
there's a few people in poker who could write that book.
because he's constantly he's constantly staked, right? And I've seen him play at all different levels. I mean, I've seen him a lot at the bike and stuff.
Right.
And then you'll see him at courtside in the NBA Finals at the Lakers game.
Well, I don't
And
think
he-
you'll ever see that. But you can see Jean Robert. I mean, here's the thing about Jean Robert. Jean Robert is the only guy who will fly to a tournament like an hour before the tournament starts with no money in his pocket.
How about this one? Jean Robert, a couple of years back when we were going on the Party Poker Million, he flew to Miami. I believe we were getting on the boat in Miami. He flew to Miami. He didn't have a seat in the tournament. He didn't have any money. And he didn't have a room on the boat.
He didn't have a room on the boat?
And he managed to get on that boat
And play the tournament.
and
bust out in the first 45.
That
to
is
50
pretty.
minutes.
That is pretty impressive.
That's some hustling skill,
He's
right?
awesome. He did the same thing to me.
That's pretty impressive stuff.
They were in Australia. He did the same thing in Australia. You think he flew 15 hours to Australia, and he didn't even. The tournament had already started. It was day 3, or day 2, I guess, whichever day it was. And he was just like, he didn't have a room. He didn't have the proper attire to wear in the casino. And somehow we got a seat in the tournament, got a room at the Crown Towers, and got a patch from a site, an online site, and started playing. It was the craziest thing you've ever seen.
Talk to us a little bit about borrowing power. I remember I've heard Matisow talk about it on TV a lot, about how, you're only as good as how much you can borrow in this business. And I don't, maybe that's good for him, but I mean, do you have a huge advantage if you can borrow and be staked and...
Jean Robert's got an advantage in that he's tenacious. He will not stop. He was at the Bay 101 asking me to help buy him into the tournament. I was like, Jean Robert, you got 5 minutes to get into the tournament. You're not getting it for me. Just go away. Before I could finish my sentence, he was gone. He was just but before that, he had sat down. He's like, hey, you did something for me last time. You got lucky. Let's give it a shot. 50 free roll. I don't know, whatever. So he's tenacious. He's good at that sort of thing. People like him. I think people genuinely like him.
I think he's likable.
He's very likable.
Yeah, he's growing on me for sure. But I mean, coming up, did you ever go bust and then you have to, it was easier for you to maybe take a shot because you're going to go bust because you knew you could borrow from somebody?
I don't know. I mean,
It's definitely easier to borrow when you go bust. I mean, I don't know if it coming up or I think it's harder.
I don't think that John Robert has particularly good borrowing power. I think he's got incredible hustling power and getting people to stake him, but I don't think people loan him money.
He actually gives people an offer where you can actually have a certain percentage of them, and he'll owe you the money for forever. Or you can just get like a bigger percentage of them, and he won't owe you the money. And I was like, why would anyone ever want to borrow? Why would anyone want to let you have paying? I mean, no one's ever going to take him up on the paying back part of it.
Yeah, I think really the only way you get good borrowing power is by paying people back.
Yeah, you borrow and pay back.
You know, I think that's the only way that people are ever going to respect you for loaning you money.
Well, don't mention any names, but are there a lot of guys that play the pro tournament circuit that just kind of go day by day? I mean, they don't really have any money. They're always staked, and they're always broke through whatever leaks. Guys like that.
I'm not so sure that there's that many that are like flat broke. I think most of them have a little bit of money. There's a lot of people that are always staked. I just don't think that people are as rich as what the public might think they are. But I don't think I think there's a few that are flat broke, but I don't think that many. I think most times when you go flat broke, you go back to where you came from and figure out a way to get some sort of a life going.
Yeah. I mean, do you guys stake other people? And sometimes, you look and, a guy's down on his luck and you think it's a good value.
I'm a sucker for that sort of thing.
I have staked in the past.
I'm a sucker for that sort of thing. I used to always buy into the sob story. I'm not so much like that anymore because I think I got burned a few times. But if I believe in someone and he's someone who I think is a good poker player, regardless of whether he has money or he doesn't have money, my big thing is if I think I can win money by staking him, then and I feel good about his character, then I will stake him.
That's
from
the big
time
one.
to time.
That's the big one.
But it's just a situation where a lot of people who are down on their luck are down on luck because they deserve to be down on their luck. They have burnt people in the past who have helped them out, or they have spent a lot of money on things that they shouldn't have.
Or they're always constantly putting themselves in a worse situation.
Yeah, they just have
right?
it's a little bit tough. But then there's a lot of people who are down on their luck for legitimate reasons who maybe have some outside, maybe they had a problem in the past, maybe not with gambling, maybe with something else, and they're legitimately good players, and it's a good business opportunity to invest in them, and that's kind of the thing that I think most people are. That's the thing that I'm open to, but
we're gonna
not anymore. Don't come up to me and ask me to stake you, but if
you won't stake me.
I'm definitely. You can't spell, bro. I'm not staking you.
Yeah, I gotta be honest. I wouldn't stake either.
We're gonna take a little break, and we will be back with more. I'm gonna talk a little high stakes poker with Bob here, coming back on PokerRoad Radio. And we are back here at the North American Poker Championship from the Falls View Casino Resort in Niagara Falls, Ontario. I'm Bart Hansen with Gavin Smith and Haralbus Vulgaris. We're going to talk a little bit about your appearance on Cash Game Poker, and it's just, high stakes poker, and it's been really just a crazy action. They introduced that 7-deuce game, and if anyone's not really familiar in that, it was, everybody at the table pays someone if they win in a showdown with 7-deuce, right? So it just expands everybody's range of what they might have in that hand on a particular situation, right?
Yeah, I think the 7-deuce game created a lot of action, but it was a little bit silly because people weren't getting paid enough for it. But I think with the cameras and with the ego factor and the fact that in a cash game, if you were playing a 7-deuce game and there was no camera, you look it down at 7-deuce, you could just say, I'm folding it because I'm only getting $500 and I'm risking. Like some of those dudes risked like $150,000 to win to win $3,500. It's not the smartest play.
I mean,
but because they could look down and say, "Oh, I had 7-deuce, I better play it, or I'm gonna look like a wimp or a pussy." A lot of people played it.
So just the risk reward, just the amount that you're getting paid.
The risk reward was horrible.
The
right amount for the blinds and the amount that people were buying in for the right reward for it should have been about, each player should have to put in about $1,300 or $1,400 in order to make it worthwhile.
The thing that I found amazing, and we have an email about straddle, and I'm going to get to that in the email portion of the show, but when these guys, was it almost an unlimited straddle? I mean, you would see a straddle and a restraddle. Of course, anyone that's not familiar with the straddle is double the big blind, automatic raise, right? And then you have the option first to act pre-flop, and then you're out of position the rest of the hand.
The game's crazy. I mean, the day I played wasn't as crazy as some of the other days, but people were putting like the sleeper straddle on, which is like a dead raise. If the one guy doesn't elect a straddle, then the next person puts a sleeper out there, which is just like a dead raise.
I mean,
pretty goofy.
As a fan of deep stack poker, that's what bothered me a little bit. I mean, I love the action of it, but once you have a straddle and a restraddle on there, and the restraddle is 2,400, you guys were playing 3-6, right? So you straddle for 12, and then restraddle for 24. And if a guy is only playing 100,000 deep, then he's only 40 times the re-straddle, right?
Correct.
I mean, there's just isn't a whole lot of play there, right?
There's not a whole lot of post-flop play to begin with, I think, on high-stakes poker. I think a lot of it is interesting situations or interesting characters. They do show some, but I guess it depends on the table dynamics. I guess there is, more so than tournaments. But yeah, you're right. It definitely, maybe that's why there's not as much deep stack play.
I mean, were you what was your strategy going in when you saw the play was just so super, super loose?
My strategy was to... I mean, there's some people who, when they were like, "Well, my proper EV play was to play optimal hands, 10% of my holdings, et cetera, et cetera." And my idea was to have fun and to kind of gamble it up. There was a lot of really, really bad players, and I think that it made sense to play as many hands as possible against
Alan
the bad
Kessler,
players.
I
the
see him
chainsaw.
here.
The chainsaw.
I want to ask him because I overheard a story, and he made supposedly a sick laydown if what he was telling the PokerStars guy over there was correct.
He's trying to get chainsaw. Come on over here, chainsaw.
Ace King versus Ace 5, and there was an ace. There were 2 aces on board. I thought you folded the river. You said,
I'll put the headphones down and keep on walking.
Forget it. The guy didn't know me, and he comes up to the game. Well, go ahead. Give him the mic real quick.
We gotta have the chainsaw on.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alan, the chainsaw Kessler.
Alan Kessler.
The guy didn't know me. I raised middle position with Ace King, and he calls, and he tentatively called. I thought he had like Ace 10 or Ace Jack, and the flop came Ace Deuce 7, and he bet out. And I figured I had this guy trapped because I think he's got like he definitely didn't have 2 pair. So I just smooth call. I want to see what he does on the turn. The turn is a 5, Ace Deuce 5 7.
We got aces up now, right? He has aces up now.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
He makes this big bet. Now I'm worried he might have Ace 7 or something. So I call again, and the river comes in Ace. Now I'm doomed.
Why
so
would it be any different if the river was an ace? If he thought
no,
he had Ace 7?
No, I know, but he bet the rest of his chips, and now I have to call. I have 3 aces with a king kicker. So,
I mean, there's less of a chance that he has Ace 7 or Ace 5 if another ace comes up on the river, right? Mathematically, I mean.
Why? He said that he thought he had Ace 7, and then another ace comes. So now
no, I put him on Ace 10 or Ace Jack when the hand started.
Okay.
But
yeah, if you think he has Ace 10 or Ace Jack, then it's fine. But to say like, oh, I thought he had Ace 7, but now another ace comes, I can't fold.
No, there's no way I can fold.
Would he make that bet with Ace Jack or Ace 10 too?
He didn't know me at all. He had just come to the table, and since that hand, I made a mistake. I criticized him on that hand, and I said, I just folded Ace 5 from the big blind. This hand, another hand later. He didn't play one hand for like four consecutive rounds. So I should keep my mouth shut, like Evan told me a long time ago.
You shouldn't talk at the table.
And how many chips do you have, Alan?
I have about 75,000.
Which is just about the average, right? Yeah. So, all right. Good luck to you. Thanks for
Alan
stopping.
Kessler, I got to apologize to you though. I just went in a draft for the players, and I didn't draft you. To see who would win this tournament, I didn't draft you though. So even though you're the chainsaw, you didn't get drafted.
They passed on the chainsaw.
Now, from what I understand, Alan Kessler is he one of the tightest, most solid guys on tour, pretty much?
Solid. I don't know if I'd go with him solid, but I guess solid's pretty solid. He's tight.
He's tight. So, I mean, you're going to play with him when he's in the hand. He's got something.
I think Alan Kessler would play more hands if they gave out drink coupons every time he played flop. He's an advantage player.
I truly believe that Alan Kessler likes to take bad beats so that he can go and tell people what beat he just took.
He plays a lot of mixed games. I don't know if you ever play in the mixed games or just no limit hold'em cash game.
We do have a couple. I have a couple of Alan Kessler stories. That you know that at the World Series this year, Alan was buying in for both tournaments. And then
the noon and the 5 p.m.
Right, and then getting the refund for the 5 p.m. So he could get the dinner coupon.
He is unbelievable.
That is no lie. But then we were
wow.
So he had no intention of ever playing the 5. It was just for the coupon.
Well, I think he played if he was out, but he would buy in regardless. But and then we were at the Mirage. And Alan was at our table, and Alan was talking, and I'm pretty hard on the chainsaw. I got to be honest with you. I kind of needle him quite a bit and sort of joke around with him because it's fun to do. So we're at the table, and it's myself and Alan and Nordberg is at the table, and Barry Greenstein, and maybe one other player. And as we're getting late in the day, and the 3 seat becomes vacant and gets filled by Nam Lee. So as Nam Lee comes to the table, Alan looks up, and he's, oh my God, how could this table get any tougher? And for whatever reason, it came to me very quickly, and I said immediately, well, I don't know, you could bust out and we could get a random player. And it was one of the few times that actually Barry has actually done an out loud laugh at a table.
The coupon story is funny. He was telling me, the first time I ever played them, he was telling me some story about how if you registered at Caesars and you played a certain amount of video poker hands, they'd give you some kind of drink coupon. But if you took that drink coupon to one place, you could get a $4 drink. If you took it to the other place, you could get a $4 drink, but you could have $5 extra something. It was just like he had the most elaborate thought out way to get like an extra $1.25 out of the casino.
Well, one of the interesting things, though, that Barry said that, especially with this casino, and we're going to have the tournament director on later in the week, is if you do play in the pit now at casinos, and I'm not suggesting you do, but if you do, you should really use whatever type of classic card they have at that casino, because it's better for poker, because
it's much better.
They will give, they'll a lot more rooms in the casino, and they'll just do better things for poker players.
Right.
I don't know if a lot of people say, well, I don't want my name tracked on there.
You definitely should. You're going to get some comp value for sure.
If I was running a casino and I had a room full of Alan Kesslers, I'd cry. I was like, because you couldn't make money.
You wouldn't be open very long.
No. Bill, he's about as squeaky as they come.
Bill Edler was telling me a story of how he and Alan arrived in Philadelphia one time, heading to a tournament in Atlantic City, and Alan says, "Well, I've got a car rented. Do you want me to give you a lift?" So Bill's like, "Okay, well, yeah, sure, I'd love that. I don't have to get a limo or whatever. So yeah, I'd love that."
Alan break out a meter for him.
But they apparently go to the desk, and Bill said it was the longest, most excruciating thing he's ever gone through, because Alan is reading through the entire contract and asking all these questions about what this will do and the insurance will do and this and that, and he's just making sure that everything is exactly maximized. So.
Well, he looks the part too, doesn't he? Looks kind of nitty, if anyone's ever seen Alan Kessler. We're going to go into our cash game corner, and Bob, I know you play a lot of high-level cash games, of course, just like on high stakes. So even before we go in there, do you have any interesting stories that you saw from high stakes that didn't get on there? Didn't get it on the TV?
It was so long ago. There was some stuff with Phil Hellmuth that was pretty interesting, but, I mean, he left for like 4 hours, 3 hours, or 2 hours, whatever it was. He just left and went and worked out and came back sweaty.
He didn't shower?
He didn't shower. He sat down or maybe he did shower but didn't have time to blow dry his hair or what it was. But he sat down and he was just out of his mind. He was complaining about how he didn't flop a set all day, and I was like, buddy, how do you flop a set when you're out lifting weights in the weight room? It's hard to flop a set when you're not here.
I'm amazed at how it seems like all the players at the table have little respect for him for his cash game play, but he has so much respect for his cash game play.
He has a different perception of himself. I think it's called distorted reality.
I mean, he said he's not a loser in the cash games.
He used to break the cash games, he said. He used to come to Vegas and break them every year. He was the biggest winner.
And you don't buy it?
Of course not.
No.
Buy it. I will say there was a time Phil Hellmuth came into this is funny. He came to playing our game one night at 3 a.m, hammered drunk. He actually had to have someone. He was on his knees, not sitting in a chair. And he had to have someone hold him up to play at the table. He was so drunk. And he he was like the nittiest drunk you've ever met in your life. He did not play a hand. And we were like, buddy, what's up? The security was like, well, do you want to keep him in the game? I was like, why are we keeping him in the game? He's drunk and he's slowing down the game and he's not playing a hand. That was our one experience with Phil Hellmuth that was kind of disappointing. We thought he was going to go off and he just passed out and they had to cart him out of the room.
You ever played with him in the ring games?
Yes.
And what do you think?
I
can see the look on Gavin's face.
It's I don't know. I mean, I've never played like in a big no limit game with him. I can't imagine. I mean, I'm one of these guys that believes that to be a great tournament player, you have to concentrate on being a great tournament player, and to be a great cash game player, you have to concentrate on being a great cash game player. And I think that the skill sets are so different that it's hard to be both. It's very difficult to be both. So that's sort of the belief I go with. I think that great tournament players could become great cash game players if they were to focus on that thing. So I think Phil's a great tournament player, and I think he maybe could be a winning cash game player, but I think because he focuses on tournaments, he's not right now.
I think Phil has a skill set where he's very, very good against very, very bad players. That is why he does good in the WSOP events, but he doesn't necessarily do good in the WPT events. Because in the WPT events, the fields are a little bit tougher, and Phil just does a better job of... That's nice. Phil just does a better job of capitalizing on the weaker players. I must say, on my show, my radio show, the other co-host doesn't text while he's on the show. I don't know what's going on here with Gavin texting, but on my shows, we have all the attention of all the co-hosts.
Ship here.
Well, I'll tell you what the difference is. This is my show.
Well, you should put down the phone. I mean, what are you doing?
You know what? On Big Poker Radio Show
Big Poker
Sunday
Sundays,
or whatever the hell you call it, I'll do whatever you do. On my show, I'll do what I want to do.
I think you just talked yourself out of an appearance on our show.
Oh, damn.
You guys were talking in the break, and I'm not going to bring up specific players, but I thought it was interesting because you were talking about some cash game players that that aren't good tournament players because maybe they have a tendency to steam sometimes.
Yeah.
Over steam. So, because we talked yesterday that usually cash game players have better fundamentals with a deeper stack than tournament players. But some guys that
just can't take a hand off in a tournament. You can't be distracted especially when you make it deep into a tournament. When you're playing and you have about 10 or 15 big blinds left late in a tournament, you have to be focused. You have to be paying attention. You can't sit there and start steaming and get pissed off about something or not be in the moment. You have to play in the moment at all times in a tournament. Cash game, you don't have to. You can take hands off. You can joke around. It's a completely different animal. That's what I feel like.
Also, you're talking about how he's playing against weaker players in the World Series. It seems like he doesn't, and he almost keeps he'll raise in position, almost keep the pots a little bit small. Rarely will he raise, more than 3 times the big blind, 2.5 times the big blind, and he's had a lot of success in the World Series.
He plays a very, very
Well,
specific.
what's wrong with raising 2.5 or 3 times the big blind?
Nothing wrong with it. It's just he doesn't seem to commit many chips. He's not going to commit all that many chips.
He's constantly taking stabs,
Well,
small stabs at big pots.
in my opinion, that's fundamentally correct tournament poker. I mean, that's what I preach is playing pots like that.
I didn't say there was anything wrong with that.
You did. You did in your tone.
I'm just talking about a guy that has 10 bracelets. Maybe I'd want to follow him more than you.
I know a guy who's got 11.
11 bracelets, you're right. 11 bracelets.
I must say you two have a wonderful chemistry.
Going into cash game poker here, we had an email here from Alex K.
Okay.
And again, this is a new part of the show that we want to bring in the new segment. And he actually addressed this to Joe and Gavin, but we'll address this to Bob and Gavin. He said that he was playing a 5-5 no-limit game, and he had $800 in front of him. And his opponents in the hand had him covered, and it was limped around 5 ways. So it was a $25 pot. He had 7-8 of clubs, and the board came out.
Sorry, what's his position?
Mid-position.
He's in mid-position.
Mid-position. And the board came out 5-4 deuce. Total rainbow. There are 5 players in the hand. The small blind let out for $20. 2 people folded in front of him, and it got to him. And he's got 7-8. He's got the upper end of a gut shot straight draw, and he wanted to figure out how much he needs to make money, how much money he needs to make in this hand for it to be profitable to call. How do we go through a process of when to call with very, very light draws? And it could be in a tournament, too, in a deep stack situation.
That is completely player dependent. It all depends on how much money your opponent is capable of losing. If a 6 peels off, and you have to remember there with that draw with the 7-8, the 6 comes off, and any person with a 3 also has a straight, right? So now if you're talking about a guy who say may have limped with a pair of jacks or something like that, it's way harder for a guy with a pair of jacks to lose much money because the texture of the board is going to have a 4-liner straight than it would be if it was more of a random flop that you couldn't make such a coordinated board.
But do you realize that would he even make a straight if the 3 came off?
No, he wouldn't. I'm saying if a 6 comes off, which makes him the nuts.
Anybody has a 3.
So somebody now who has a pair of 10s isn't probably going to lose a lot of money.
Yeah.
But is that a board, though, at a 5-5 level where somebody calls in between there with a 3 and a 6 comes off, you're going to get their money?
Probably not.
Probably not?
You're going to get some money, whether or not you're going to get all the money. But that's what you have to. That's all part of sitting down and assessing your table and figuring out your opposition at the time. The times that you want to make big draws, like for instance, in my tournament game, I'm fairly well known for taking off gut shots. But if you'll notice, whenever I'm taking off, like on a flop, I'm calling often I'm calling like a pot-sized bet with a gut shot, which theoretically isn't fundamentally sound poker. But if you notice, one of the times I'm doing it against opponents that are capable of losing a lot of money with one pair. I'm not doing it against Ted Forrest or Haralabos or guys that are not going to pay off huge amounts of money.
Are you so then in that type of situation there, you're taking them off against players hoping to hit, and if you don't, you fold. But in other situations, would you be trying to peel it off, where if you miss, you'll still make a play at the pot?
There's times, like obviously if I have position, and I'm taking it off, there's a lot of times I'm going to make a play on this if it checks to me for sure. But if the person fires a second bullet, I would say more, a very, very high majority of the time I will let it go on the turn.
I will say that in my experience in cash games, the biggest pots I've ever won have been peeling off gut shots. But I've been getting the right implied odds. And again, that's what the person's asking. He's asking, what are my implied odds?
That's the question. He wants to know how to do the math.
Well, it's very simple. You calculate your number of odds, or your number of outs, which I guess he has 4 outs.
Right.
And you calculate how many cards are left in the deck, and you divide the 2, and that's the odds of him hitting his card. Then he needs to hit at least that much from the other person.
So if we say there's about, say, 45 on, well, there's about 47 unseen cards. We'll call it 11 or 2.
He's got a 4 in 47 chance of hitting his card.
Right, so it's about 1 in between 11 and 12. He would need to make, and I think this is where people get lost, about 11 to 1 from the entire hand on the bet size. So if the guy bets 20 and he can make over 220 to 240 on the total hand, then it's correct for him to call. Now, you're saying that, against players that are going to go, buck wild with one pair, you'll make those calls with gut shots. But, you might also, can you have a case where you overcall a guy in the middle that you think is incredibly strong, slow playing something big? Like, just by his demeanor, he's flopped a set or something like that.
I mean, there's times that you might want to take off a card there just because of the fact that there's other cards that can win you this pot. Like what happens if a 3 comes off on a 2-4-5 board? The guy doesn't have to have a naked ace or a 6 or whatever, and you may be able to pick this pot up just because you're going to be able to bet it if it checks to you. There's a whole lot of
All right, nice shot.
There's a whole lot of different factors that go into these decisions. So you can break it down to just numbers if you want, but I think that when you're talking about implied odds, it goes into a whole lot more than just can I make the exact amount of money? Because
this isn't a matter of him making the exact. He has to make at least that much for it to be
profitable.
Right.
But I what I'm saying here is I think that you have to factor in some ways that I'm trying to figure out the best way to say this because I don't know exactly how it is. But you have to consider some sort of monetary value for the times that you're going to get a card that you can steal this pot.
Yeah, which is why I asked you if there's some times when you don't hit also.
Right. So. Yeah. So and you have to sort of assess some value to the fact that you're not always going to lose this pot. You're not always going to lose this pot when you miss.
Correct.
Now, when you're peeling, you said some of the biggest pots you've ever won are peeling off for gut shots, and I've seen guys peel off for gut shots when they don't realize that their gut shot might make the top end of somebody who might be, theoretically in there with an open-ended straight draw. Right. Something like that. Heads up. Like you said, if a guy, if your head's up there in that spot with 7-8 and you've called a pre-flop raise and you think the guy's got aces or kings, the board comes up 4-5 deuce, and the guy bets out, and you just call now, and now a 6 comes. Again, is this guy going to be the type of player that's going to pay you off with a one-liner to a straight? What are the types of pots that you won huge gut shots with?
I won a pot at the Bellagio during the World Series of Poker where I had king, queen, and the board came back something, and I let out small and the guy raised, and I called and I hit my gut shot, and I think I stacked them for like 135,000.
You have a set or something?
Yeah.
Big set?
Yeah.
Big set.
I won a monster pot off Vanessa Russo at the Mirage when I had 6-4 and the flop came up 8-7 whatever, and I was in the small blind, she was in the big blind, there was a few other people, and she had led at the pot and it folded around to me. And I took a card off out of position there, just looking for the 5, and the 5 peeled off. And
check again, or did you bet?
I checked again, and she fired, and I put in a raise, and she insta moved in on me with her 2 pair, and naturally.
And is that something you might? Yeah, that's actually a case there. You're not going for a gut shot to the nuts, but is that a situation you might proceed with caution? A multi-way pot. Are you ever scared of 9-6?
Yeah, sometimes I'd be scared of 9-6. I might not even carry on with the pot in a multi-way necessarily. It's it turned out to be just an opportunity where I felt that Vanessa was capable of losing a ton of chips, even with just 1 pair.
Yeah.
She had 2 pair, but in my opinion, she didn't need to have 2 pair to.
2 pair was a bonus.
To lose a lot. Yeah, 2 pair was what got you all of the chips instead of just a lot of the chips.
Again, you can email us at prradio@pokerroad.com or give us phone calls at 877-836-ROAD. I think we have a phone call. Actually, I think it's Bobo with the play of the day. Here we go.
Yeah, how you doing? I just have an interesting story I'd like to tell. I was walking through the tournament area there at Niagara, the WPT, and there seemed to be a crowd forming around one of the tables. So I walk over, and it's folded all the way to the button. The button is Peter Nordberg Feldman. He decides to raise on the button. The 2 blinds fold. Peter scoops in the pot. This has been Bobo with the play of the day.
Wow, fantastic, Bobo! Thank you for
Bobo.
the call, man. It's good to know that we got people out there watching the action and keeping us in. And I'm just going to say right now that I think Nordberg played that hand flawlessly. I think Nordberg played the hand great.
We're going to move on here to the hand of the day, and this was an interesting hand. And
that wasn't the hand of the day.
That was the play of the day, buddy.
Play of the day. This is the hand.
If you didn't bust out so early, you would have had an opportunity at winning play of the day.
Motherfucker.
And, this isn't always an interesting spot that comes up, and I find it to be a good laydown, and we'll get into it in a second here. We've got Jared Smith, who raises it up to 2,100. Owen Crow, in position, re-raises to 6,000, and Marla Smith pushes all in.
Marla?
Marla Smith, excuse me. Pushes all in.
I think her name's actually Marlis. I think I got introduced to her today.
What did she look like?
I think her name is Marlis, actually.
I think it's Marlis.
Yeah. Thanks, Bob.
No problem.
Jeez.
I don't even know who she is. I just was.
The only reason I think this is
What
because
does
I
she
actually
look
got, I don't remember that much,
She
but I
an
mean I
older
remember
Middle-aged?
middle-aged.
I think she was at my starting table.
Yeah.
Okay.
First guy immediately calls. Now, you're Crow, who made the initial re-raise with 2 queens. What do you do here? You've got a raise from up front of you. You re-raise, and the guy pushes behind you. It went 2,100, 6,000, 32,000, and a call. Is this
wow.
I think
I'm pretty much done with 2 queens most of the time.
You're lucky that
Yeah.
you feel like you're lucky that you were up against both aces and kings as opposed to just being up to kings where you could maybe go broke if it was one person. But with
Right.
2, it's like
I think
that's a lucky spot.
I think that's a pretty easy fold, yeah.
Pretty easy fold, and it ended up being Marla Smith had kings, and the pre-flop raiser had aces. Now, they always talk about, are there spots in tournaments where you get away from kings pre-flop? Have you done that before?
I've done it once.
I did it this year at the WSOP main event.
Really? Mm-hmm. How did the action go down there?
It went. I had just finally doubled up after I was struggling all day, and I looked down at 2 kings, and I befriended this Scandinavian dude who was next to me, who was like the tightest guy in Scandinavia. Usually their Swedish kids are extremely aggressive, and this guy was like very, very tight. And I raised, and he re-raised me, and it folded back to me. I made it 2,100. I think he made it, or actually I made it 2,200, and he made it 6,000. And I made it 12,000. And he said, "Oh no, you raised. I'm all in." I was like, okay. And I thought about it for a while, and I just said, "There's no shot that this guy doesn't have me beat." And I folded. And I showed 2 kings, and he wasn't going to show anything. And then I was like, "What? Come on!" And then I didn't even. Then I was like, "I don't even care if you don't show me. It doesn't make a difference." But then he showed 2 aces. So.
Yeah.
One of the things too,
But it was an easy spot.
Mine was easier.
Let's hear it.
Mine was actually easy. Amazingly enough, actually even easier than that, which I agree was pretty easy. I don't even remember the person, but this one guy raises up pre-flop, and I flat call with 2 kings. Now this tight guy out of the blind re-raises. The original raiser calls. I put in a number 3, and now the guy goes all in. The tight guy in the blind goes all in. That didn't seem very true. It was really tight, and it looks like. It really looks like I have aces when I flat call pre-flop, right. And then it gets raised, and now I put in another raise.
Here's where I think
it's hard for them to do that.
The internet guys, like we had Matt Choppy K on today, that talk about how betting patterns, this and that. That to me is like, I don't think there's a shot in the world that a guy like that's going to fold kings in that spot. Because he thinks he's very aggressive, and I think that's one of the advantages the live players have, is that whose phone is that? It must be Gavin's phone.
It's not mine.
I think the live players have that advantage where the internet players don't, but over time they will gain that advantage. But I think that's one of the things that's why Gavin's a superstar of the WPT that he is.
Well, these internet guys are sometimes playing these 3-bet squeeze moves where it doesn't necessarily mean anything. They're just trying to pick up dead money right in the pot.
No, it's a different game on the internet, that's for sure. It's a different game when you can close the window and start up another tournament in 10 minutes if you get knocked out. It's like a never-ending tournament on the internet, it seems.
Bringing up your point, one of the things I've noticed with the more advanced players, having their arsenal is that, a guy raises, another guy re-raises, and you've got aces in the, out of position in the blind. Well, if you put that 3rd bet all in, a guy like who has queens there can get away from it. But if you call and then get the guy to commit a bet on the flop and check raise all in, then he doesn't go anywhere. You run the risk of, a scare card coming out, but it seems like, when you put that 3rd bet in, and some of those amateur players don't do that. They almost, I've got aces and I just want to.
I think there's lots of different ways to play different hands, which is what kind of makes poker exciting. And if I could just learn how to play as good as Gavin.
Well,
I just want to have Bob's bankroll.
Yeah,
I tell you what, you teach me how to play poker the way you know how to play, not the way you tell people, but the way you really know how to play poker. Not the speeches you give people about how you play hands on the radio, false information. I want the real scoop.
If you're buying in for 200, 300,000 into a high stakes poker game, you definitely need to be pretty.
I sold a lot of pieces of myself.
Oh, you sold your pieces. How does the sports betting go too?
Sports betting's going good.
Yeah.
Why didn't I ever get offered to buy a piece of you in the high stakes?
I went there and there was like some dudes are like, I want to buy a piece, and I was like, okay, and I sold it. Because if you were there, I probably would have sold it.
Did you win?
I lost 70,000.
I'm glad I didn't get a piece.
You're glad.
And that was you were trying to bluff with 7 deuce one time, right?
That, and then yeah, that was it. I mean, I lost about 30,000 with the 7 deuce, and I lost a little bit more with some other stuff. So it was a good table. It was really silly to play tight at that table. I could have lost 70,000 was probably the most I could lose, and I could have won $500,000 if I hit a few hands. This table was extremely loose. So.
You ever bet on the NFL?
Not if I have a, not not normally.
No, it's just you can't handicap it.
You can handicap it. I actually do bet in the NFL. I just bet yesterday. I had one bet yesterday. We had the under in the second half.
Yeah, I was going to say I think that the
Wembley Stadium
I
game.
think the true handicapping in NFL where you can get an edge is on totals. I think sides is very difficult.
How about the Patriots 7-0 against 7-0 against the spread?
It's unbelievable.
Is it
Well, when you win by 50 every week,
that's what I mean.
They're
They're favored by 4.5 against Indy at Indy. What do you think about that game next week?
I think if I had to bet, I would bet on the. I mean, how could you bet against them? It's going to be a great game.
I bet the over.
You bet the over.
The over is 57 for a regular season game.
I don't think it I don't think it matters what the total's going to be. I just don't see. I don't see how it can stay under.
I will say this: that I will say that with Indianapolis, they will run a lot of clock. They will run a lot of clock.
That's true.
Run the ball a little bit.
Yeah, I think the smart money will. I think that the game will actually get bet down a little bit in the total. But what do I know? I don't know anything about football.
Well, we got a bunch of emails here. One of the main themes that we've been getting.
How long does this show go for, by the way? It seems like it's been going on forever. I mean, this
dozens and dozens of emails.
I'll tell you what, though, it does tend to go longer when you're on it, though, Bob.
What the fuck?
You're fun to be on it with.
Man,
it's entertaining. I'm having fun. I never had any fun with that.
Is that why you're looking at? Well, I mean, I think that you're not giving Barry enough credit for the stories. I think you guys are blowing them off and not giving them the time to shine. the guy does 2 shows and you find a replacement for him already. I mean, that's not really very nice.
We've had dozens and dozens of emails about people asking about when is this show going to be up on iTunes, and I talked to Joey Seabiak.
Seabiak?
I don't know Joey Seabiak
today, and he Seabiak Greenstein, and he told me that after Foxwoods, it will definitely be up. We've also gotten a lot of emails. We asked for feedback. One here from Danny Mirth talking about that people like a more serious note to the show with me hosting. They like Joey Stapleton, but they like the more serious poker talk.
Yeah, sure.
This is Danny Murthy, whose email is barthansen@gmail.com.
So we're going to take another break here and wrap things up with Gavin Smith and Bob Vulgaris here from the North American Poker Championship. And we are back here on PokerRoad Radio. I'm Bart Hansen with Haralbos Vulgaris, Gavin Smith.
Whoa, time.
What?
No. My name always has to be said first.
We're just going to move along here. Matt Choppy K, thank you very, very much for joining us.
I'll quit. No
one of the new young online studs out there. You've won the Sunday Million, PokerStars Sunday Million in January for over $200,000. Second chance winner on PokerStars for $50,500. Full tilt second chance winner as well. Now you've played a couple of live tournaments. I know you've played the WSOPE in London, Aruba, WPT Barcelona. Of course, you're here, and you've played Turks and Caicos. What's it like to be playing live in a tournament, meeting some of these guys that you've played online for, about 2 years now?
Oh, yeah, it's good to see everyone. Good to meet everyone, too. Live's kind of different than the online players. They're kind of a lot worse.
The live players are worse?
Yeah, like the standard raise varies so much, especially in the early levels. And a lot of people early don't know what they're doing.
Okay.
Well, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you, though, because, Barry Greenstein takes the view, at live players, he likes the best live players over the best online players live. Now, a lot of online guys think, online, these guys, we're so much tougher than the live players. But in a live format, who do you think is better, the live players and the online players in a brick-and-mortar casino?
Well, it depends on the player. It varies. Like, a very good online player could be very good live, but not all very good online players are very good live. I'm just trying to learn the live thing now. I'm kind of getting it down.
Do you think that sometimes you're giving away a little bit of info, or some of your buddies that you've met who play online are giving away info with just they're not comfortable with, handling their chips? You think they're giving out some physical tells?
Probably, but nothing too major, I'd say.
Are you a guy that thinks, you put more credence in betting patterns as opposed to maybe some guys that play live that think that their physical reads are strong?
Yeah, it's mostly betting patterns for me.
Mostly betting patterns? Now, again, we're in Canada here. We're at Fallsview. And, you were talking about different race sizes and stuff. You must have watched the main event of the World Series, right?
Not the past year.
No, you didn't see Jerry Yang bringing in for like 10 times
He's
the
in
race?
Canada. They don't have the main event on in Canada.
Yeah, they
haven't
showed it,
played
I think,
it
on
on
TSN, don't they?
Probably
They're
do,
not
but
there yet, I don't think.
No.
I don't know.
They haven't played. So when you say
It's
that,
not completely interesting to me.
so when you say that, like, you know, live players are bringing in for these different sizes, what do you mean by that? Can you elaborate on that?
Well, let's say the blinds are 25-50, where a standard raise is 150 to 200. Some people just open for 500 or 550. I was talking to SE Trojans, and at his starting table, people were opening for 10 times the big blind almost every hand, and that was a standard raise at that table.
I hate those guys.
I mean, what do you
mind
think?
those guys.
Now, I mean, you guys played, obviously. I mean,
They don't let me see a lot of flops.
We can still look at the flop. You don't have to. You don't have to call the raise. You can still see what it was and say, "Oh, look, I'm glad I folded."
No, I don't like doing that.
Oh, I like doing that.
What do you guys think about, like, guys? Like, I mean, now we've come in and the age is only 19.
How old are you?
I'm 19.
Oh.
So you've seen these guys. You've never seen them before in a live tournament. Do you think they're giving stuff away? Just in terms of.
Well, actually, it's funny when Matt played at my tournament or at my table, excuse me, at the Turks and Caicos tournament, and we talked about that sort of thing in the. We were outside. I don't know where we were, but we were outside afterwards after we had all busted out, and we were talking about that. And I think a lot of them do give away a lot of information. I think Matt looked very, very uncomfortable. I had said that to him when he bluffed off all his chips. And
Almost all.
Yeah, well, pretty much all. And then and he was like, "No, I feel like I was very this way I always act." And at the table, everyone kind of felt like he was bluffing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
I
think-
actually looked under the table to see if he had wet his pants.
And had he?
No. To his credit, he didn't.
You think you're picking up stuff from these young guys, Gavin, too?
I don't know that you're picking it up from them more. I've never played with Matt, so I can't really say anything. Matt Choppy, so I got
Matt
Top
Choppy,
cake.
remember? Yeah.
but so I can't say anything about that. But I don't know. I mean, a lot of these young internet guys that are starting to play now don't give up that much. You know, you got your guys like that Jared Hamby. He doesn't give up much,
Right.
and Nordberg is one of the better players out there right now, I think, who came from an online sort of thing. I just think that it takes a little bit of experience. I think anybody who's going to play a
Their
live
first-
tournament,
yeah,
their
their
first
first
live
live
tournament is probably going to be a little uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, you're not used to people staring you down. And, you know, if they're good poker players, I just don't think it's going to take them that long to be able to handle live poker, you know. But, I mean, I think what the online people bring to the game is they bring, like, wicked-ass variance. You know, they might all think they're better than everybody, but I guarantee that they're a lot of them are great players, don't get me wrong. And, I mean, I'm not the guy that's arguing against variance because I have a ton of it. But that's what... Sorry.
Who's that,
Can't
Gavin?
touch it.
Huh?
That's apparently
great.
it's MC
Yeah.
Hammer.
Very professional, of course.
It's MC Hammer.
It's a good ringtone. It's a good ringtone. No, but I mean, I think that's what online players bring that traditional brick and mortar type players don't have as much as. They have aggression and sometimes to the point
Super
of being,
aggression,
sometimes to the point of being wild aggression.
Yeah.
So they're bringing a lot of variance into the game, and you're going to see these guys bombing out, and guys like Barry who see these guys bombing out real quick all the time or whatever are going to say, well, wow, you know, he's obviously not as good as I am because he bombs out right away or whatever, you know. But then it doesn't see how far they go the times that they do get chips.
Now,
you know?
how big is it, Matt, for you personally and some of the guys that you see that are online players playing here, the adjustment of kind of almost being like an action junkie in the sense of, all right, you're playing 5 or 6 tables online, multiple tournaments, some guys play cash games at the same time, you're always in action. Does it affect you when you go through like a cold run of cards here where it might be proper to fold for 1 or 2 hours almost every single hand?
Oh, yeah, I find live a lot more boring. Like just the constant folding if you don't get hands.
Mm-hmm. I mean, do you feel like you pushed it a little bit?
What do you mean?
Do you push it sometimes when, you know, you got to be in the action, so it's... You know,
I don't have that problem.
You don't have that problem? Have you
No.
seen it with some of the other guys, though?
Yeah, some of them do.
I
Gavin,
saw
you've
it.
seen
Like
it?
some of
Yeah.
them.
I saw the
I
one.
live it.
I saw the one guy. He got so excited. I don't know if anyone knows about this, but he got so excited that he texted his friend and he said, "Hey, can you look up the symptoms for a heart attack?" This is a true story. And his friend came back with a bunch of symptoms for a heart attack, and the guy was like, "I think I'm having a heart attack." And he finished the tournament, got knocked out, called an ambulance, and got taken to the hospital. I'm not lying. I'm not
Like
making it up.
wheezing and like chest pain and stuff
Yeah,
like
he was
that?
22 years old, and he was so, I don't know if it
Was
was
he
'cause-
having a heart attack?
No, the doctor looked at him and do you know who I'm talking about? Vivek Ramjadur or something. Anyways, well, yeah, he went to the hospital. And
Did you just call him Ram du jour?
the
Victor, the Ram of the day?
Ram of the day, Victor. Vivek something or other. Nice kid, but yeah, the doctor said you're 20 years old. You're probably not having a heart attack. Maybe you should, go back. I think he either ate something spicy or broke a sweat for the first time in his life. A heart attack. So
Matt-
they do get excited.
Matt, how did you start, your online career? Were you a classic guy with a very little roll and you kind of did the whole rake back whoring type thing?
I never knew about rate back until like 3 months ago, maybe.
Oh, really?
But it was just a home game with friends, and
Do you
I was
feel
like,
kind of dumb right now?
yeah. It was just a home game with friends, and then I wanted to beat them. And I eventually did, and I started online tournaments, cash games, and I won a $10 tournament, which got me started for $1,300. A week later, I won a $20 tournament for $1,080. Then I shot up in cash games.
You play the cash games as well?
Not overly now.
Okay.
Not as much now. I mean, what
I find
happens?
tournaments a lot more exciting, and cash games I kind of get bored.
What happens when you win $201,000 on January 7th, right, in the Sunday Million?
Yeah.
Now, that type of bankroll boost. What did you start doing then? Did you start playing more? And that's the other thing I wanted to ask you. The higher the tournament, normally in a cash game, especially online, the higher you play, the tougher the games are. Not, live, it's not necessarily that way. In the cash games, live can just be, rich fish that are up there, tougher pros. What about the tournaments, though? The higher you go, is the tougher competition on the online tournaments?
For online tournaments, generally, but it depends. Basically, the rebuys are the toughest tournaments, like the 200 rebuy on Sundays.
Guys that are taking advantage of that have had success and have a higher bankroll, and they're going to be like, well, I can take multiple shots at this.
Basically, the more skilled players will go to the top of the leaderboard.
Go to the top of the leaderboard. And is that what you did after you won your $201,000?
I kept on experimenting new things, because I was still learning the game mostly, seeing what works, seeing what doesn't. So I did a lot of non-standard things that most people would say are bad, but it worked for me. And it also built up a very aggressive image, which I can use against people now.
Now, on Bob's show, Big Poker Sunday, he mentioned that was brought up about multi-counting in the W Coup, the main event. And Bob, didn't you say that you didn't really think it was that, correct me if I'm wrong, that was that big of a deal? It might not necessarily even be cheating. It's in the rules, but if it wasn't in the rules, it's not like you're on the same table with yourself. You're just giving you multiple chances.
If everyone was allowed to multi-account, then I don't think it would be cheating. I don't think it changes the game in any way if you have a 5,000 person tournament and you're at table 1,036 or 136 and table 55. I don't think it's a big deal. But I think because the rules are such that it is illegal and it is against the rules, and some people are still doing it, I think that's an unfair advantage. Not to them. It's just it doesn't make the game. They're not actually having an advantage by playing.
Right.
It's just they're just reducing.
What do you think about multi-account?
I don't like it. I don't mind it if it was allowed, and let's say one person would have the same name everywhere, so you knew it was that person. It's these random unknowns that are actually skilled players that you don't know about.
With
and
different
you can't play
names,
against
so you don't
them
even know.
the way you would have if you knew it was them. So that's the only real issue I have with it.
If everybody had the same name and it was within the rules, it's something that
How about if everyone just had a number when they're playing these tournaments? What's the point of having a name anyways? Aside from being Matt Choppy K.
Yeah, don't take Choppy away.
Gotta keep Choppy.
What's bull?
Have you noticed that the tournaments have become more tough since the UI-EGA bill from last year? People talk about it in the mid-levels and the cash games. I don't know how much you were playing before that, but the player pool has been a little bit reduced, right?
Yeah, so that's basically when I started playing a lot more tournaments. So
you don't really know the difference from
Not really.
from the front. So you came in with the tough competition, and you.
I want to revert back here for a second, though. You said that there's a number of techniques that you tried and had success using that other people thought were bad plays.
Yeah.
Give me an example of what you're talking about there.
Let's say, just raising out of position, 3-betting out of position and stuff like that. 4-betting, just experimenting different types of things to see what works.
Like you talking 3-betting and 4-betting in a position with garbage?
Bluffs, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And just seeing what works, seeing what doesn't.
I tell you when it works when they fold.
Or when they call and you catch.
And then it works.
You might be able to find that a guy who re-raises, his range of calling a 3-bet is extremely narrow, right? Like aces, kings, or queens. If not, we actually in our hand of the day we had a guy that folded queens to a 3-bet. Something like that, putting pressure on the second raiser. Possibly
Online now, it's if I raise in late position, I'll almost always get 3-bet. So when I'm raising late position, almost if I raise ace 10 and someone shoves 20 big blinds deep, I'll instantly call and usually be right.
So you make much thinner calls online than you do live?
Yeah, a lot thinner.
Just because people are re-raising garbage.
Yeah.
You have to make thin calls when you're also 3-betting with
would you characterize yourself as more of a pre-flop player or more of a post-flop player? Where are you getting the majority of your money in?
The main reason why I was experimenting so much is because I wasn't comfortable with the flop. So I basically tried to avoid the flop.
Okay.
So that took away my weakness and really focused on my strength. Now I'm playing more flops and stuff. So I kind of mix it up, try to change up my game, try to be more unpredictable.
I mean, it seems like the way you said that some of these online tournaments are running, especially the ones that don't give you a lot of chips, it is almost more pre-flop play, right? I mean, if people are raising and re-raising with all kinds of wide ranges of hands, and they've got half their stack in there, I mean, there isn't a lot of, I mean, maybe there's a little bit of post-flop play, but turn and river play?
Mostly like late in the tournament, it's like that.
Yeah.
Late in the
mostly
live
pre-flop.
tournament, there's very, very little flop play as well.
With the antes and such. Now, one of the other interesting things I thought that PokerStars did was, what's your idea or view on the whole Shark Scope thing and using third-party websites for tournament information? You know, they're frowning upon it. They actually banned it. What do you think about that? What, are those important tools for someone who's playing online tournaments full-time?
I don't like it. I think it should be allowed.
You think
like,
it should be allowed?
doesn't give a real huge advantage at all. Maybe like 0.1% edge or something really ridiculously small like that. It doesn't help that much.
Yeah.
Like, it's over a long period of time. People change up their play over time. And
I think
it
it's
just
an
doesn't.
advantage for the people who. I mean, you just talked about you didn't like the fact if it doesn't provide you with an advantage, then why would you care if someone was multi-accounting with one name and another name? I mean, you said that if it's a different person that a name you'd never heard before, or a new name, then how would you? I guess just from playing with them is how you'd store more information based on how you play them versus his Shark Scope stats or whatever. Is that what you would use?
Yeah, just experience with that person.
So you just, but you don't, but you want to be able to use those tools, though.
It's more like my curiosity. Like, I wonder how this is doing. I mostly look at myself the most.
But if you do look at a guy, if you look,
see how I've been doing.
You know, if you look at a guy though, if you make the final table at the end of a tournament, you look at a guy that, you know, is a pretty big net loser in a tournament, and then you look at the guy to your left who's a pretty big net winner. I mean, that would dictate how you might play certain hands, right?
I guess for final tables, it's more of an advantage, but
I think that it's not always exactly right, that Sharp Scope.
First of all, it's Shark Scope.
Whatever the heck it is. I know somebody came on and told me, like, I'm down, like, I don't know, like some silly amount of money, like $300,000 or something.
Well, that would make me think that it would be more leaning towards correct, right?
Well, except for the fact that I don't have $300,000 online. So I mean, if I had it there, I could probably lose it pretty easily. But
I think some of them are sit and go statistics, and some of them are the multi tournament, multi table statistics.
Now, of all the guys that you see here, or maybe some players that we haven't seen come up, who do you think is the best online player that maybe we have seen or we haven't seen that we should be taking a look at over the next few months or years or however old they are?
like one that's not already a big name.
Yeah, maybe one that is and one that's not.
Give us one of each, yeah.
Who do you think the best player right now that's known is coming up from the online world?
I don't really know. It's hard to say.
Well, who are some of the players you respect?
Answer yourself, bro.
Basically, all right, myself.
Yeah.
But there's also, like, I don't think I'm. It's hard to say which one's the best. Like, maybe have a range of top 5 or something like that. But I really think Imperium and West Menlo AA is very good.
What do you think about a net 15? Obviously, she just won.
Yeah, she's a good player.
The WSOPE, and you know, over the next couple of years, you think that there's going to be some guys coming up that we don't know yet, too?
Yeah, there should always be some new people, but.
But right now,
I was just actually thinking about this today. Like, it took me like a while to be actually recognizable.
Mm-hmm.
I took a couple tournament wins, so I guess after someone wins a couple,
right,
start seeing more of them.
And then, you know, if you come to a live event like this, you know, they start taking your picture, you get some more exposure, right? Well, Matt Choppy K, I want to appreciate you coming on. Good luck for the rest of your tournament. How are you doing in chips right now?
I have 105,000 right now.
105,000. I think the average is about 80. How has the tournament gone so far for you?
Today's been kind of up and down, chipping up, flipping down.
Yeah, any big hands to note of?
Not really.
Not really?
I called someone down with a pair of 8s on the jack high board when he bet all the streets, so that was kind of good. And I won, yeah.
So you're pretty confident about your abilities, and you like your table draw right now?
I don't like my table draw. It's pretty awful.
Who are some of the guys on your table?
Well, to start, there was Okro, SC Trojans, and AK87, which is the online guys.
Yeah, he's on the top, on a couple of the top leaderboards, right?
Now a couple of them got knocked out, so it's SC Trojans, Gus Hansen's there too, and there's no real like fish at the table. Everyone seems competent.
Mm-hmm. Well,
so it's not great.
Well, you know what they say about that if you don't spot the fish.
What is your plan then? If you're being 19 now, what is your plan as far as live poker goes between now and then? Are you planning on playing a lot of European events or just anything that a 19-year-old can play? Or
this is my 6th live event in 2 months, so I've been playing a lot more live, not including the prelims, but
right.
And I'll play mostly online for the remainder of the year. Then after the online player of the year thing is over. I'll play more live in January and such.
I mean, that's another interesting question a lot of the online guys talk about. Well, you got online, you win a tournament, you don't have to tip. Tournament, staff, dealers, there isn't a percentage taken out. The entry fees are not as high a percentage, and there's no expenses. So, but do you still think traveling around and playing in the big events can be profitable with all the other things that go into it?
Yeah, I think probably my ROI would be higher in live tournaments than online, just because the online field is so tough now.
And you think the live tournaments are softer?
Yes, but there's also less of them. So, like online, there's a ton of tournaments to play from, especially on Sundays.
Yeah.
So with the high volume, you're almost certain to be profitable if you are a profitable player.
Well, Matt Choppy K, again, I appreciate you stopping by, and good luck for the rest of the tournament. Gavin, Bob, and I will be back to wrap things up here on PokerRoad Radio.
Yep.
And we're back here in Canada. Joe Seabach less. Again, he did not make it in. The customs sent him away. We almost missed Gavin yesterday, too. Of course, stumbling in late, as usual, stopped at the border. What did you say? You crossed the border 200 times and you never had the trouble that we've had this year, right?
I honestly think I've probably crossed it over 200 times, and I can't remember for sure, but I think those are the first 2 times I've ever been stopped.
Have you been having trouble switching back, going back and forth?
No. I get a little bit of trouble coming into once I actually got a visa, I've had more trouble. Before I had a visa in the U.S., I was able to come in and do whatever. But now that I've got the visa, or not the visa, but the permit, whatever. I guess it's a visa. Canadians don't technically need visas.
The P1 visa? Is that what you guys
the P1. And that just takes forever. I mean, they sit there. And whereas before I would just go through and, what are you doing? Hanging out. And they would just let you in the country. Now it's like they want to know what you're doing, how long you're going to be there. Do you have your paperwork with you? I never bring my paperwork.
That was my problem yesterday. I didn't have my paperwork.
I staple it to my passport now to have it with me at all times.
Do they hassle you about the over $10,000 in cash if you're moving back and forth?
I mean, I'll tell you what, that is a big hassle. I will say that I try not to bring over $10,000 across the board with me, and if I do, I tend to play stupid. For any customs guys out there,
You're crazy.
It's
so easy to fill out the form.
You know what it is, though? You have to file the form when you leave the country. A lot of people don't know that, but when you leave Canada, you have to file the form with Canada Customs, and then when you enter the U.S., you have to file the form again. So you have to do 2 stops when you're traveling. It's a little bit difficult. Personally, I hardly ever have more than $10,000 on me, ever.
I don't either.
The customs lady that stopped Amanda, Joe, and I had asked me, because I had $8,000 on me, and she's like, well, do you really only have $8,000? Well, I said, well, I got a couple hundred in my wallet. She said, well, so you have 82, because if you have more than $10,000, we find out about it, we can take it. Now, I don't know if that's just BS, just being intimidating.
They can take the money, then you have to go through a process of proving where you got it from, which is just a joke. So.
Well, that's going to do it for us today. Again, thanks for joining us on day 2. We will be back here with Geraldos Vulgaris on day 3 and Gavin Smith. And good luck to Barry Greenstein chipping up well. And who do you have in your pool there, Gavin?
I have Nick Schulman.
Good player.
Nordberg.
Good player.
Adam Levy.
Hope all these guys
Bill Edler.
Good player.
And Roy Winston.
Good player.
So we will see you tomorrow here from the North American Poker Championship in Niagara Falls, Ontario.